In the world of American muscle, Dodge has built some of the most legendary machines ever to hit the asphalt. Roaring beasts that define power, style, and rebellion. But not every Dodge or muscle badge lived up to the name. Over the decades, a few models missed the mark so badly that they became infamous among fans. Cars that carried iconic names but none of the spirit. These are the 10 most hated Dodge muscle cars ever made. The machines that left Mopar fans shaking their heads instead of burning rubber. Number 10. By 1972, the American muscle car was in retreat, and the Dodge Challenger SE became the tragic embodiment of that downfall. Once a symbol of raw V8 aggression and youthful rebellion, the Challenger had been declawed by emissions regulations, insurance hikes, and a changing automotive landscape. Gone were the thunderous 426 Hemi and the brutal 446 pack. In their place, smaller, choke V8-esque gas for air through restrictive smog systems. Even the 340 small block, once a powerhouse, had lost its spark. On paper, the SE trim looked sophisticated, with its vinyl roof, wood-grain interior, and luxury-oriented design cues, but enthusiasts knew better. Underneath the cosmetic flash lay a tired powertrain that delivered little excitement. The once feared Challenger had become a boulevard cruiser pretending to be a street fighter, and for Mopar fans, that was a betrayal too bitter to forgive. Number 9. Few things infuriate car enthusiasts more than seeing a legendary name dragged through the mud. The 1977 Dodge Charger Daytona was the prime example. In the late 60s, the original Charger Daytona was a marvel of engineering, an aerodynamic missile built for NASCAR domination, with a towering rear wing and roaring 440 or Hemi V8S. Fast forward to 1977, and the Daytona name had been shamelessly resurrected for a cosmetic package on what was essentially a luxury cruiser. Instead of racing pedigree, it offered a plush interior, heavy curb weight, an engine so weak they couldn't outrun a station wagon. With garish striped kits and plastic spoilers, Dodge tried to capitalize on nostalgia without offering any of performance. Fans were livid. The once revered Daytona badge had been reduced to a marketing gimmick, and that tarnished legacy still stings decades later. Number 8. The Dodge Dart had long been the underdog hero of the Mopar world. Compact, cheap, and viciously fast in its high-performance trims. But by 1975, the Dart Swinger was a ghost of its former self. The golden age of high-compression small blocks was over, and Dodge's engineers had their hands tied by emissions laws and economic pressures. The once potent 340 V8 was replaced by a sleepy 318 that barely cracked 150 horsepower. The car's handling had softened to a marshmallow ride, and the aggressive character that defined the earlier Darts was gone. Even the styling felt uninspired, more commuter car than muscle machine. For the enthusiasts who remember the Dart GTS, this was an unbearable downgrade. The 1975 Dart Swinger marked the sad transition of Dodge's compact from a scrappy street warrior to a dull, regulation choke relic. Number 7. When the Dodge Magnum XC arrived in showrooms, it looked like a champion. The long hood, hidden headlights, and sleek fastback shape hinted at speed and power, but was all smoke and mirrors. Built on Chrysler's aging B-body platform, the Magnum was heavy, soft, and outdated before it even hit the road. The engine lineup didn't help its case either. Even the largest available V8, a 400 cubic inch motor, struggled to produce 180 horsepower thanks to emission strangulation. Handling was cumbersome, braking uninspired, and the steering vague. Everything a muscle car shouldn't be. Dodge tried to market it as a luxury performance coupe, but it failed to deliver either luxury or performance convincingly. What could have been a bold revival of the classic Mopar spirit instead became a bloated, confused product, an era that didn't know what muscle cars were anymore. Number 6. When Dodge brought back the Charger name in the early 1980s, enthusiasts expected the return of a legend. What they got instead was a front-wheel drive compact based on the humble Dodge Omni. To say fans were horrified would be an understatement. The Charger, once synonymous with roaring V8S and tire smoke, had been reborn as an economy hatchback powered by four-cylinder engines. Even though Carroll Shelby later got involved and produced the sporty Charger Shelby editions, the damage was already done. The base models were painfully slow, cheaply built, and bore no resemblance, mechanical or spiritual, to their ancestors. Mopar loyalists couldn't believe Dodge would defile the Charger name like this. It was as if the soul of American muscle had been stripped out and replaced with Japanese-inspired efficiency. A car that once stood for rebellion had been turned into a commuter car, and that betrayal left scars that lasted years. Number 5. The Dodge Aspen R/T was supposed to be the savior of Mopar performance during the dark, post-oil crisis years. Instead, it became a cautionary tale of failure. On paper, it sounded promising. Sporty styling, R/T badging, and optional V8 power. But in reality, it was plagued with horrendous build quality. Rust appeared almost immediately, even on cars less than a year old. Electrical issues, poor fit and finish, and reliability problems destroyed its credibility. The suspension was sloppy, the handling unpredictable, and the engines felt sluggish despite the R/T branding. What made things worse was that Dodge tried to market it as a return performance when it was anything but. The Aspen R/T didn't just disappoint, it embarrassed the brand. It symbolized Chrysler's chaotic late 70s period and stands as one of the most infamous muscle cars Dodge ever released. Number 4. When the Dodge Stealth debuted in the early 90s, it turned heads. It was sleek, futuristic, and packed with advanced technology, twin turbos, all-wheel drive, and four-wheel steering. But there was one big problem. It wasn't really a Dodge. Underneath the skin, the Stealth was a rebadged Mitsubishi 3000 GT. For traditional muscle car fans, that was unforgivable. Sure, it was fast. The R/T twin turbo could outrun most American V8s of the era, but it lacked the raw mechanical charm that made Dodges legendary. There was no burly V8 rumble, no brutal simplicity, just a complex Japanese sports car with an American badge. While younger drivers admired its performance, purists saw it as Dodge abandoning its roots. It wasn't a bad car, far from it, but it was one that alienated the very people who had once defined the brand's identity. Number 3. The mid-1970s Charger SE was perhaps the most visible sign of Dodge's identity crisis. Once a menacing two-door powerhouse, the Charger had evolved, or rather, devolved, into a luxury coupe aimed at middle-aged buyers who wanted comfort over performance. Built on the same platform as the Chrysler Cordoba, it came adorned with vinyl roofs, opera windows, and acres of chrome. It looked plush, but weighed a staggering 4,200 pounds and handled like a barge. Under the hood, the big block engines had been neutered by emissions laws, and the once glorious Magnum V8s were mere shadows of their former selves. Dodge tried to market it as refined muscle, but nobody was fooled. Enthusiasts viewed it as the moment the Charger name officially died. The 1975 Charger SE wasn't just slow. It was a betrayal of everything the Charger had once stood for. Number 2. If there's one car that made Mopar fans question everything, it was the 1978 Dodge Challenger. The name alone evoked images of Hemi-powered beasts and tire-shredding glory, but the car that arrived was anything but. The so-called Challenger was a rebadged Mitsubishi Galant Lambda, imported from Japan and sold through Dodge dealers. Gone were the V8S, replaced by small inline 4s and mild 6s. It wasn't fast, it didn't sound good, and it certainly didn't look like an American muscle car. It handled decently, but who bought a Challenger for cornering? Fans felt insulted that Dodge would slap such an iconic nameplate on what was essentially a foreign economy coupe. It was the lowest point in Challenger's history, and for many, it took decades until the 2008 rebirth for the name to truly recover. Number 1. Topping the list is the 1983 Dodge Charger 2.2, a car so far removed from the Charger legacy that it became infamous overnight. With a tiny four-cylinder engine, front-wheel drive, and economy car origins, it had none of the raw, masculine presence that defined the Charger of the late 60s and early 70s. The base 2.2-liter model produced a meager 84 horsepower, a joke
now,
compared
during the
to
1980s, Carroll Shelby was working his magic on Dodge cars just like this, turning them into fun-to-drive pocket rockets. On the outside, a new hood was added with a turbo power bulge and cooling vents, along with unique ground effects, including the front air dam and rear wing. These Shelbys featured a two-tone paint scheme, which in this case is Santa Fe blue crystal coat with radiant silver accents. Just one of 843 in this combination. That color is named after the home of the Chrysler Shelby Performance Center in Santa Fe Springs, California, where these cars were developed. All of them